All right, so this is the second video of the first section. This one is all about the optimal flow state. So I'll start the video here, and the goal of this one section here is to develop a way of being. And to do that, like we said in the previous video, we want to have an alter ego that you can turn on. And if you've got this done well, then you can turn it on and it brings the best form of your own unique leadership style. Now, I do quite a bit of sports psychology. So currently I'm working with 5 different local teams. They're mostly volleyball teams, but I do with other types of sports. And the principles of sports psychology are very transferable to the boardroom and also any kind of leadership context. So you can use some of these things we'll be talking about for your career, for goal setting. You can use this in some of your relationships and other aspects of life. Now, there's 3 really quick principles I'll share. There's lots of others, but there's 3 quick ones to share. One is that when it comes to the optimal state of mind, any kind of habit or a behavior that you constantly repeat in your thinking, that is a neural pathway. Neurons have connected themselves into a chain. And so for you to think one thought like the color pink, that is a specific chain of neurons. And to think about the smell of rain, that's another specific chain. And for it to become a strong habit, that pathway actually becomes really thick and strong. If it's just a tiny little tendril there, then it's not a habit yet. Right? So the other thing we know is that the brain becomes or is quite plastic. That means that it can rewire itself. And you can actually break habits that you don't want to have and establish new ones. And the way to do that is this third principle here, is that neurons that fire together wire together. So if 2 neurons side by side fire at the exact same time, there is a little connection that gets made between them. Do that again and then again, and they will form a stronger connection. Once you get that strong enough, then if you touch this one, it will automatically light this one up, or vice versa. Touch this one and it'll light that one up. And so we use that in sports psychology to turn on the mental state that you want to be in. So when I am working with teams, I start off by asking them to describe for me the optimal state. What does it feel like? And they almost always describe this identical situation. Their body feels light and loose. Their emotions are aroused and hungry for the win. They also are high in self-confidence, meaning that they trust their instincts. Their mind is also very quiet. There's not a lot of words going through their head. They're just in the game. And if there is words, it's usually just tactics. They're not thinking about technique. So if the ball's coming at them, they're not thinking something like, make sure I take 3 steps and then put my arm in a certain way in order to make it happen. The ball's coming towards them and they're thinking, where do I want to put it for this specific situation? Where's the weakest player on their team? So that's tactics, not technique. Now, the opposite, when I ask them to describe what it feels like when the score starts going the wrong way, when their body is making mistakes, when they keep dropping and fumbling things, describe for me that feeling. They describe their body as slow and sluggish. Things, they just can't get there in time. Emotionally, they'll feel one of 2 things, anxious and panicked, or bored and distracted. Their mind's not in the game. They also doubt their abilities. So in the opposite, where they've got high confidence in the instincts of their body, when they're in the opposite mindset, they're thinking, I hope the ball doesn't come to me. I hope it doesn't come to me. Right? They oftentimes will doubt their teammates too. Teammates will be maybe doing not so well. And so especially in volleyball, this is a bad one, because when you doubt your team member, you might start jumping out of your lane and into theirs, and you start fighting for the ball. And that just creates chaos on the court. So the last bit there is that their mind is quite chattery. There's a lot going on there where they're overthinking. And so when I ask some teams to describe for me what's going through their mind, they will be thinking, I hope the ball doesn't come to me, or I hope I don't screw up, because then my teammates are going to hate me. Or they're thinking, just about a whole bunch of different things, what the coach is going to do to them if they get this wrong. And instead of being able to just settle down and into the game, there's chatter. So these two mindsets, they will jump back and forth between these two within moments on the field. And this is where parents get really frustrated. I know, watching my kids play, is when you see that the team is just starting to roil and boil with these kind of problems, and you see a couple team members who are starting to unravel. There's nothing you can do, and they don't know how to stop the bleeding. And so that's where this comes in. How do you stop the bleeding? And the way to do that is to have flow going all the time. Now, flow is the actual technical term that sports psychologists use to describe this mental state of being. Basketball players call this being on fire. Hockey players and football players would say you're in the zone. It's all describing the exact same thing, though. It's the optimal state of mind. And when you get there, some people who've been in sports for a long time have described this almost like an out-of-body experience, where they're on the outside watching their body doing amazing things. So how do you get flow to happen all the time as opposed to just rare occasions? So there's three things to do. First of all, you got to find it. You got to look back in your history and find the moment that you had flow going on. Then second, you tweak it. Look at how to just make some tiny little changes to how it operates so that it's at its ultimate best. And then push it. There is a way for you to trigger it to turn on at any time that you want. Now, I do a lot of work with teenagers, and I've discovered that the older ones are able to get this a lot faster than the younger ones. And one of the main reasons is the older ones, and I'm talking about 16 and over, they've already experienced this. They have experienced those moments when things are going well. It's when I'm working with 14-year-olds, oftentimes they give me blank looks because they just haven't been in sports long enough to have had that flow experience, right? Now, this is the same thing in your leadership context. If you haven't been in leadership a lot, or if you're at the beginning of your career, you may not have experienced this yet. But if you're into it a little ways, then there will have been some moments where you have experienced this. And if that's the case, if you've never experienced it before in a leadership context, then you need to find where you've experienced it in some other context. We can talk individually about that. But the principles of sports psychology apply to leadership when you're able to find that moment where you were being at your best. This is your own authentic sweet spot. And if you're able to find that, then it becomes the foundation that we're able to build on for the rest of this section here. Therefore, you've got some homework coming out of this video here. Need you to look back over your history and find the moment in your leadership history where you were in flow. And it's probably you're going to find it in some sort of difficult situation that you were in, or some spot where you had your team wrestling with something and you really brought the best out of them. Look back over your history and find that. And then take a piece of paper and write down how the three aspects of yourself was feeling. What was your body feeling? What was your emotional state? And what were you concentrating on? What was your cerebral cortex focusing on? Okay. How's your body feel? How's your emotions feel? And what's your brain thinking about? Okay. Write that down and we'll see you in the next video.